If you had been a better brother, none of this would have happened. Those were the last words Nathan Hayes ever expected to hear from his own mother, yet somehow they were also the words that perfectly summed up the role he had been assigned since the day his little brother entered the world. You see, for as long as Nathan could remember, he had been the background character in his own family, quiet, reliable, invisible, and his family had treated this invisibility not as a tragedy but as an advantage. It allowed them to pour every ounce of affection, attention, and validation into his younger brother, Jacob, the golden child who could do no wrong. Nathan was 34 now, a calm, collected man with a quiet intelligence that often made people assume his life must have been shaped by stability. But behind the polished exterior, years of being overlooked had left small, almost invisible fractures. He worked in tech, built systems, solved problems, and lived in the kind of silence only a child who grew up unheard truly understood. He was good, exceptionally good at what he did, but as a boy, that goodness had never been enough. Growing up in a suburb outside Boston, he had learned early that effort and achievement did not guarantee love. Jacob could bring home a B- on a science quiz and their mother would tape it proudly to the refrigerator. Nathan could win the entire regional science fair with a meticulously engineered model of the solar system, and his parents wouldn't even show up because Jacob had baseball practice. Not again. His blue ribbon sat unopened on the mantel for a week before quietly disappearing into the basement, swallowed by dust and irrelevance. That it wasn't that his parents were cruel, they simply never saw him. Not really. They saw the potential glory Jacob might one day bring the family, maybe a college baseball scholarship, maybe professional sports, maybe just the pride of being the son who mattered more. Nathan, on the other hand, seemed like a self-driving car to them, smart, capable, never needing praise or guidance, someone who didn't require their attention because, in their minds, he already had everything figured out. By 16, Jacob received a brand new car to boost his confidence. Nathan received a part-time job at a hardware store because a little responsibility builds character. When Nathan graduated high school as valedictorian, his parents spent more time taking photos of Jacob being bored in the bleachers than listening to their firstborn deliver the speech he had spent weeks perfecting. And when he got into MIT, an achievement that could have been a family milestone, they downplayed it, so Jacob wouldn't feel overshadowed. His mother even suggested he tone it down a bit when cousins asked about his future. It was in those years that Nathan quietly promised himself something: if he wanted a real life, he would have to build it alone, and he did. He left for MIT with a scholarship, 3 part-time jobs, and a determination carved from every ignored moment of childhood. College became the first place where he was evaluated, not as the older brother but as Nathan himself, brilliant, focused, relentless. He found his way into software architecture, excelled faster than he expected, and accepted a promising job in Boston to stay close to home, still clinging to some faint hope that his parents might want. They notice him, they didn't. But life has a strange way of balancing itself, and in a tiny coffee shop near his office, Nathan met the one person who seemed to see everything no one else ever had. Her name was Emily Carter. Warm, witty, and disarmingly kind, Emily was working as a barista while finishing her teaching degree. She remembered customers' orders, their mood swings, their little habits. With Nathan, she remembered something else: his loneliness. Before he even realized it, she had been writing encouraging notes on his coffee cups for weeks. When he finally asked her out, she told him she had been waiting for him to notice. With Emily, Nathan learned what it meant to be chosen. Their connection felt natural, easy, like a puzzle clicking into place after years of forcing mismatched pieces. They spent evenings cooking elaborate dinners neither could afford, weekends exploring hidden bookstores, and quiet mornings curled up with coffee on their tiny balcony. She pushed him to go for a major promotion, helped him prepare, and celebrated his success more than anyone else in his life had. When he proposed after 14 months together, she cried, not because she was surprised, but because she had been hoping he would ask. Their wedding was small but perfect in Nathan's eyes. Even though his family spent most of the reception bragging about Jacob's new job prospects in California. At one point, his mother even interrupted Emily's father's speech just to show relatives a text message Jacob had sent about a second interview. That should have been a warning sign. Emily brushed it off, insisting that they were just very proud of Jacob. Nathan let it go. For once in his life, he felt happy, truly happy. 3 years passed in a gentle blur of domestic peace. Nathan and Emily decorated their Cambridge condo with photos from trips, built a small herb garden on the balcony, and talked about starting a family someday. It was the kind of quiet happiness he had never thought possible. Then Jacob came back. After failing to adjust to the startup culture in California, an environment that expected accountability, Jacob wasn't used to. He returned to Boston with an email full of nostalgia and regret. He wanted to make things right, he said. He missed his big brother. He wanted another chance. Nathan hesitated. But Emily, ever compassionate, encouraged him. People grow up, she said. Maybe he finally understands what he lost. Nathan wanted to believe her. He met Jacob for dinner, and to his surprise, his brother seemed changed, calmer, acknowledging his privilege for the first time. A week later, Nathan introduced Jacob to Emily. They clicked instantly. Too instantly, though the thought only existed as a faint whisper in the back of Nathan's mind. Before long, Jacob was stopping by for dinner a couple times a week. He brought bottles of wine, shared stories from California, even defended Nathan when their parents slipped into their old favoritism during Sunday dinners. For the first time in his life, Nathan wondered if he was finally getting the brother he had always wanted. But there is always a moment, a small, almost imperceptible shift when something starts to go wrong. The first hint came when Jacob began dropping by unannounced, often while Nathan was still at work. Emily said it was harmless, that she enjoyed the company while grading papers. Nathan believed her. He believed both of them. Then came the second hint, the laughter, soft, intimate, threaded with an inside joke he wasn't part of. And then the third, their sudden silence whenever he walked into a room, like the air had frozen around them. A comment cut short. A phone turned face down. A moment to carefully rearrange. Nathan saw these things. He noticed every detail, but he had spent a lifetime convincing himself that doubt made him ungrateful, that suspicion made him unreasonable, that silence was safer than confrontation. So he pushed the discomfort aside. He trusted them. He told himself it was nothing. He had no idea that the life he had built, his career, his marriage, his fragile hope in family, was already cracking beneath him. He had no idea that the people he trusted most were about to shatter it completely. Nathan would later think back to that night long before the truth came out. Long before everything collapsed and realized that the world had already begun tilting beneath his feet. Yet, at the time, he didn't sense the danger. He only sensed a shift he couldn't name, a tension he didn't know how to interpret. It was subtle, almost invisible, but it was there, and it followed him into the next chapter of his life. A chapter that began with 8 simple words from his wife. "I need to tell you something important today." She said it over dinner, her voice soft, trembling slightly as she set down her fork. Nathan felt his heart pick up speed, but not in fear, in hope. They had been talking about starting a family for months, imagining names, imagining futures. So he reached across the table, squeezed her hand gently, and asked, "Is it what I think it is?" Emily nodded, tears gathering in her eyes. "I'm pregnant, Nate." Something inside him broke open. Joy, real, overwhelming, disorienting joy rushed through him so fiercely he almost couldn't breathe. He stood, circled the table, and pulled her into his arms, whispering into her hair, "We're going to be parents." For the first time in a long time, he felt like everything in his life was aligning at last. But then he saw it, over Emily's shoulder, standing in the doorway because he had let himself into the condo again. Jacob was smiling. Not a surprised smile, not a congratulatory smile. Something else, something knowing, something wrong. Jacob's eyes met Nathan's for just a second, just one, and the expression there made Nathan's stomach twist in a way he couldn't explain. "Wow," Jacob said finally, stepping into the room a little too casually. "Congrats, man, that's huge." Emily wiped her tears, her cheeks flushed, and murmured something about grabbing water. Jacob stepped closer to Nathan, clapped him on the back, and said, "You'll be a great dad." "Really?" But the words were too smooth, too practiced, too steady, and Nathan, who for his entire life had trained himself to ignore uneasy instincts, felt the first spark of fear. After that, Jacob's presence became constant. He appeared almost every evening, and not just for an hour or two. He stayed late, he lingered, he made himself comfortable, touching Emily's shoulder lightly when she laughed, brushing past her in the kitchen, leaning close enough for their heads to nearly touch when they whispered over a recipe or joke. Emily brushed off Nathan's discomfort gently. "He's lonely. He's trying to reconnect. Let's just be patient." But patience wasn't what Nathan needed. He needed reassurance. He needed honesty. And what he got instead were text messages Emily turned face down, conversations that stopped abruptly when he entered the room, and a strange, electric energy between Emily and Jacob that no amount of logic could explain away. Every time he tried to address it, Emily would give him a soft look that made him feel foolish for even asking. "Jake is your brother," she'd say. "We're family." Don't overthink things. So Nathan forced himself to stop thinking. For a while, 3 months into the pregnancy, everything broke. It started with a message, a simple buzz on Emily's phone late at night as she slept beside him. The screen lit up, revealing the preview of a text from a name that made his breath catch. Jacob. He knew he shouldn't look. 6 years of trust told him to set the phone down and walk away. But something deeper, something primal and afraid told him that he needed to know. He needed the truth. Whatever it was. His hand trembled as he unlocked her phone. The truth did not come gently. Their messages stretched back months, hundreds of them. Some harmless, some intimate, some unmistakably explicit. Conversations about hotel rooms, about longing, about futures they were planning. Messages about the baby. Not the baby, their baby. They hadn't planned to tell Nathan, not until after the child was born, when, quote, he'll be too attached to leave. Nathan read that line 3 times, each time feeling something inside him collapse, slow and heavy like a building giving way. When he finally looked up, the room felt too quiet. Emily was still sleeping soundly next to him, unaware that the entire world had shifted. Nathan sat in the chair by the window until dawn, holding her phone in his hands, unable to cry, unable to think, just listening to the sound of something breaking. When Emily woke and saw the phone in his hands, her face went pale. She didn't try to lie. She didn't try to deny anything. She just whispered, "Nathan, we didn't mean for this to happen." He stared at her, unable to form words. She continued, her voice shaking. "Jake and I, we just connected. It wasn't planned. It wasn't supposed to be this way." "And the baby?" Nathan asked, though he already knew. Emily swallowed hard. "It's Jake's. I'm so sorry." Sorry as if the word meant anything, as if it could hold the weight of the betrayal. She reached for him, crying now. "You have to understand, we didn't want to hurt you, we just understood each other better than you and I did." Nathan didn't scream. He didn't throw anything. He didn't rage. He simply stood, stepped away from her touch, and said quietly, "I need space." But space wasn't what he got. When he called his parents, hoping for some shred of understanding, they immediately defended Jacob. He made a mistake, his mother said, as if adultery and pregnancy were minor accidents. "He's going to be a father now. You need to forgive him," his father added. "Families should support each other. Jake's in a tough spot." Nathan couldn't believe what he was hearing. "You want me to support them?" he asked, voice steady but hollow. Well, his mother replied, "You're the one with the good job. And Emily shouldn't be stressed. Think of the baby. The baby. Jake's baby. Emily's baby. Not his dot." And yet somehow, they all expected him to carry the weight of it. The humiliation didn't stop there. Jacob showed up at Nathan's workplace, demanding to talk like men, insisting that they could work this out. When Nathan refused, security escorted Jacob out of the building. Jacob made a scene, yelling in the lobby, drawing stares. Hours later, the damage spread online. Emily posted vague accusations, implying Nathan had abandoned her during pregnancy. Jacob reposted them with captions about real men stepping up and supporting family no matter what. Nathan watched the chaos unfold in silence, not because he was weak, but because something inside him had shifted. Something fundamental. He finally understood that nothing he said would fix this. Nothing he did would change who they were or what they expected. And for the first time in his life, he chose not to fight for their approval. He chose not to explain himself, not to defend himself, not to justify his pain. He chose silence, and it was in that silence that he realized something powerful, something cold and steady. His silence would be the very thing that forced them to face the consequences they had spent a lifetime avoiding. Nathan had always believed that silence was a space for peace, a quiet room where thoughts could settle. But after everything that happened, after the betrayal, the humiliation, the sudden collapse of the life he thought he understood, silence became something else. It became a weapon, a boundary, a line drawn so sharp it could cut. He walked out of the condo the morning after the truth shattered around him, taking only what he needed: a backpack, his work laptop, and a folder containing every legal document he could quickly grab. He didn't slam the door. He didn't leave a note. He didn't look back. He simply locked the door behind him and exhaled for the first time in hours. By noon, he had booked a hotel. By evening, he had hired a lawyer. By nightfall, he had blocked every number connected to Emily and Jacob. He did not text. He did not explain. He did not say anything at all, because in Nathan's mind, there was nothing left to say. Back at the condo, chaos brewed in the spaces he used to call home. Emily called 37 times, then 20 more, Jake emailed. His parents tried every possible number. His mother left voicemails filled with frantic apologies laced with guilt, followed by angry messages about family, unity, and responsibility. But the calls never reached him. The door stayed closed. The silence grew thicker. While Nathan withdrew, the world around his betrayers began to tighten its grip. Jake lost his job within a week. Word of the affair, the workplace confrontation, and the social media drama had spread faster than he expected. Employers didn't want instability. They didn't want the man who showed up at his brother's office in a rage. They didn't want drama. Emily's insurance situation became even worse. Without Nathan's coverage, her prenatal care became a maze of bills she couldn't pay. As the medical costs piled up, she turned to the only people who had always enabled Jake, Nathan's parents, and as always, they opened their door, and their wallets, and their retirement fund. Soon, they were paying for groceries, rent, doctor visits, and every other expense Jake and Emily claimed they couldn't handle. Nathan's father drained their emergency savings. His mother pawned jewelry she had kept for decades. They believed the sacrifice was noble, helping the child who needed them most. But even noble sacrifices can destroy a family. 2 weeks after Nathan disappeared into his quiet hotel room, the pressure broke. His mother showed up at his workplace. She didn't make an appointment. She didn't call ahead. She marched straight into the lobby, demanding to see her son as if she had every right to disrupt the life she had spent years overlooking. Employees whispered. Security watched, and Nathan, he stood at the mezzanine railing above her, watching his mother pace in frantic circles, pleading with the receptionist. Nathan needs to help his brother, she insisted loudly. He can't just abandon them. Emily is pregnant. Do you people understand? Pregnant. The receptionist, to her credit, stayed calm. Ma'am, if Mr. Hayes has asked not to receive visitors, we can't. I'm his mother, she snapped. I demand to see him right now. Nathan closed his eyes for a moment, breathing deeply. He could have walked down. He could have confronted her. He could have told her to leave, but he didn't. Instead, he called security and requested, in a steady voice, that she be escorted out of the building. His mother didn't go quietly. She cried, shouted, begged, accusing him of cruelty, of selfishness, of turning his back on family. And when security gently guided her toward the exit, she turned one last time and screamed upward, "You're letting your brother suffer. This is your fault, Nathan." He stood motionless at the railing. He didn't answer. He didn't react. Silence again. The kind that hurt more than anger ever could. That night, Jacob tried a new tactic. He created a new email address, one Nathan hadn't blocked yet, and sent a long, emotional message filled with apologies, half explanations, and pleas for help. Attached was a sonogram image. The subject line read, "Please don't punish the baby." Nathan stared at the ultrasound for a long moment. A tiny shape, a small life, a child who hadn't asked for any of this. But the image wasn't sent with love or humility. It was a tool, a manipulation, a final attempt to make him responsible for their choices. He didn't reply. He forwarded the email to his lawyer instead. A habit formed. Every message, every voicemail forwarded, every confrontation written down, every incident documented. Even the security footage from the office lobby was obtained. Nathan wasn't just silent, he was building an archive. Not for revenge, for protection. Then came the moment no one expected. A lawsuit. Jake and Emily, pushed by fear, panic, and the belief that Nathan would eventually cave, filed a legal claim requesting additional financial support. Their argument was outrageous. Emotional distress, loss of employment caused by Nathan's actions, and even pregnancy complications due to stress. Nathan's attorney nearly laughed when she read it, but Nathan didn't laugh. He simply said, "Let's finish this." The courtroom felt colder than he expected. Emily sat with her hands on her swollen stomach, eyes red as if she had been crying for days. Jake sat behind her, suit slightly wrinkled, jaw clenched. Nathan's parents were present too, whispering angrily to each other as if they were preparing to testify against their own son. Their lawyer spun a dramatic story about a cruel, unfeeling man abandoning his pregnant wife and unemployed brother. They painted Nathan as vindictive, jealous, controlling traits Nathan had never possessed, but which they crafted with remarkable creativity. But then it was Nathan's lawyer's turn. Piece by piece, she dismantled the entire narrative. She played the video of Nathan's mother causing a disturbance at his workplace, yelling accusations in the lobby. She introduced footage showing Jake attempting to confront Nathan at the office weeks earlier, being escorted out after raising his voice. She presented screenshots of social media posts where Emily implied Nathan was abusive, and Jake exaggerated the story even further. She provided phone records, emails, and every message where Jake and Emily begged for money while publicly shaming Nathan at the same time. And then came the final blow. Medical records showing Emily's pregnancy was perfectly healthy, without any complications at all. The courtroom fell silent. Judge looked at Jake and Emily with an expression that made Nathan realize just how badly they had overplayed their hand. Your claims, the judge said slowly, appear to be built on manipulation, deceit, and a gross misuse of the legal system. This court does not tolerate such behavior. The lawsuit was dismissed on the spot. Nathan's alimony obligations were reduced by more than half, and the judge issued a written warning about future harassment. Emily cried. Jake turned pale. Nathan's parents glared as if betrayal ran in reverse. But Nathan, he simply nodded, thanked the judge, and walked out of the courtroom without looking back. Outside, the air felt different, lighter, cleaner, yet behind him, he could still hear the muffled echoes of the people who once claimed to love him scrambling to understand what had just happened. He had been silent, and in that silence, their entire plan had unraveled. But what Nathan didn't know, what he couldn't yet imagine, was that the downfall he had just witnessed was only the beginning, because his family wasn't done, not even close, and the face they were about to show him next would be the darkest one yet. Nathan walked out of the courthouse with a calmness that didn't feel human. It felt earned, like the quiet that comes after a storm finally spends its fury. Behind him, the echoes of his family's outrage still bounced against the marble walls, but none of it touched him anymore. Part 3 had ended with a courtroom victory. Part 4 began with something better: clarity. The judge's ruling left no room for confusion. Amy and Jake had lost completely. Their lawsuit was dismissed as baseless and manipulative. Amy's alimony, which had already been reduced in a previous agreement, was cut by another 60%. Jake received a written warning for harassment, and the judge made it painfully clear that any future legal stunts would be met with severe consequences. Nathan didn't celebrate. He didn't smirk or gloat. He simply exhaled a slow, steady breath he'd been holding for far too long. The people who once believed they could twist his silence into weakness had finally faced a truth they never expected. He was done being their victim, but for Jake and Amy, the consequences were only beginning. Without Nathan's financial support, bills collapsed on top of them like falling bricks. Medical expenses, rent, groceries, they all became mountains neither of them could climb. Jake's unemployment checks barely covered a week's worth of expenses. Emily's family refused to get involved after learning the truth, and Nathan's parents, who once swore they would always protect Jake, found themselves drowning in debt. Arguments erupted in the household daily, loud enough that neighbors began calling in noise complaints. Nathan's father blamed Jake for ruining the family name. His mother blamed Amy for manipulating the boys, and Jake, he blamed everyone but himself. The golden child was finally living without the gold. A week after the ruling, Nathan received a call from a familiar number, the house he grew up in. He let it ring twice before answering, mostly out of curiosity. It was Linda, an aunt who had always been more of a passive observer than an ally. Her voice came trembling through the receiver. Nathan, your parents are in trouble, real trouble. Nathan leaned back in his chair, expression unreadable. They've been in trouble for a long time. They chose to be. A shaky sigh. They're saying they might lose the house. Medical bills, credit cards, everything's falling apart. He didn't say anything, and Linda took that silence as an opening. They think, and I agree, that maybe you could help. You're the only one doing well right now. Nathan closed his eyes briefly. He felt no guilt, no pull, no longing to rescue the people who had watched him drown for years. But what Linda said next cut through the air like a blade. You know, maybe none of this would have happened if you'd been a better husband. Maybe Amy wouldn't have looked elsewhere. The room went still. Nathan didn't raise his voice. He didn't curse. He didn't let the anger show. Instead, he spoke with a coldness so steady it made Linda fall silent mid-breath. You're right, he said. I wasn't the husband she wanted. She wanted a man who lied, cheated, and manipulated everyone around him, and that's exactly who she chose. Nathan, she began, but he didn't let her finish. My family destroyed themselves because they protected betrayers. They defended liars. They enabled cruelty. Every consequence they're facing now. They earned it. The line trembled with the weight of his words. I'm not saving anyone, he said. Not this time. Not ever again. And with that he ended the call. Then he blocked her number just as he had blocked the rest of his extended family. For the first time in his life, Nathan felt the final thread to his past snap cleanly. By the time spring settled over Boston, Nathan had made his decision. He was leaving. Seattle had offered him a senior position, better pay, better growth, and a chance to breathe without the ghosts of his old life lurking behind every corner. He accepted within an hour. The next morning, he contacted a realtor to sell the condo he once shared with Emily. He packed his life into 3 suitcases and 2 boxes, everything else donated or discarded. His co-workers organized a small farewell gathering. They toasted him with warmth he wasn't accustomed to receiving. One of them, Mark, a mentor who had become something like family, pulled him aside near the end of the night. "You know something, Nathan," Mark said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Your value, it was never up to your parents, or your ex, or anyone else. You defined it long before they ever tried to take it from you." Nathan inhaled sharply. It was the closest he'd come to tears since the entire nightmare began. He didn't cry, but the gratitude in his chest was real, heavy, grounding. He left the party with a rare sense of peace. Seattle was waiting. News of the baby arrived. 2 months later, a short email from a distant cousin. "Emily gave birth today." No photos, no details, just a factual statement, like a newspaper headline. Nathan read the message once, closed it, and moved on. He didn't ask about the name. He didn't look for pictures. He didn't wonder if the child resembled Jake. He simply continued his day. Because peace isn't about forgetting the past. It's about choosing not to live inside it. In Seattle, Nathan learned how to breathe again. He built a new routine, made new friends, explored new neighborhoods. He planted herbs on his balcony just like he once did with Emily. Only this time the quiet felt comforting, not suffocating. He didn't date, not yet. He wasn't searching for love. He was searching for himself. And slowly, piece by piece, he found the parts of him his family had spent years convincing him didn't exist. Strength, worth, boundaries, self-respect. The things no one had ever taught him. His past didn't vanish, but it no longer influenced the man he was building. And so the story didn't end with revenge. It didn't end with shouting or dramatic confrontation. That ended with footsteps, quiet ones, firm ones. The footsteps of a man walking away from the wreckage others created. A man who chose dignity over chaos. A man who chose a future over a past that never loved him. A man who realized that silence wasn't surrender, it was liberation. Sometimes, he learned, the most powerful revenge is not explosive. It doesn't require flames or fury. It doesn't need an audience. Sometimes, revenge is simply leaving, walking away, and letting them hear the sound of their own collapse echo behind you.